Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Jessica Van Vonderen. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority is in Queensland trying to sell its water buyback plans. After a meeting in St George, the authority scrambled to release the science behind its proposal, with farmers questioning whether it's right. Irrigators and community leaders say the plans could be devastating, while others argue they're vital for the life of the entire basin. AgForce estimates the equivalent of 6 Sydney harbours full of water will be taken out of the system, threatening the livelihoods of 40% of Australian farmers. While much of the focus has been on the southern states, many farmers here will also be affected. The Murray-Darling Basin Authority held meetings in 3 southern Queensland towns. First, a look at the St George gathering. Kathy McLeish reports.
The Murray-Darling Basin Authority came to Queensland with a message of reassurance.
We flagged that we would be undertaking further social and economic assessments. We have given them a very high flagging in terms of they have to be addressed even though they don't sit neatly within the legislative framework.
But the 500 locals who turned out for the meeting at St George weren't convinced.
30 years there's been bugger all flows, overland flows, but there's no irrigation on the Maranoa, so you can't blame irrigation for that. It's just a natural cycle we're in, and your report does not seem to cope with the huge variabilities we get in the river flows in this part of the world.
It's time for you to stop bending over for Bob and the Greens and stand up and fight for some people.
The announcement of 2 federal inquiries into the socio-economic impact of the plan hasn't made the community feel any easier.
I don't hold any faith in what has happened to here today.
The insecurity of this is devastating. Devastating on this community. I mean, we've been battling with the droughts for such a long time now.
In this region, the economy is based largely on agriculture and irrigation, especially cotton, and this year the rivers are flowing after 10 years of drought. There's expected to be a record plant, including the country's largest ever crop to be planted at Crombie Station. But the buoyant economic mood is under threat. The region is facing water cuts as high as 45%.
This is serious stuff. You can't just take water out of a river system and expect nothing to happen.
David Crombie is the president of the National Farmers Federation. He says this kind of cut could rip the heart out of a town.
It has a devastating impact. I mean, you can't take 45% out. It doesn't just mean 45% less production on farms. I mean, there's a tipping point in these communities, tipping point for industries where if you don't have the throughput, then the local cotton gin closes or the local fruit operation closes. There's also a tipping point for businesses in town. If you don't have that critical mass of business, then businesses close, and that affects right through the community. It affects the schools, it affects the hospitals, it affects everything.
It'd probably only take 5 or 10% for a lot of businesses to not be viable anymore.
Shops in the town closed their doors for this meeting. Business owners were standing side by side with farmers. A locally commissioned report has estimated that 110 jobs could be lost in the area if the cuts are realised.
It's all about taking water and bugger the rest effectively. So I think we're all aware that there's more efficient ways of doing things. There's better ways of achieving what they want to achieve.
Business says the proposal has plunged the region into at least 14 months of uncertainty.
Local property owners who are retirement age, first generation, they want to move on. At the moment, they don't know the value of their asset. They don't know what they're selling. Obviously, from an investor's point of view, they're going to find it difficult to put a value on it as well. If you're a small business and you want to set up in a regional area, what assurances have you got that what your future is going to hold?
Farmers here also believe the Murray-Darling Authority's cuts aren't based on realistic figures. The proposed cuts are based on scientific data, but many producers are questioning those numbers. They say until they see the technical report, they're unable to have genuine and timely input.
We're not going to get the answers we want. We need to see, one of the things that the community really wants to see is the real science that justifies the magnitude of the cutbacks.
Chair of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, Mike Taylor, says the authority understands the impact of the process, but he says it is following correct procedure and will take consultations with the community seriously.
the fact that we've actually quite consciously added this additional one step, which is about much more free and easy consultation, I don't make any shying away from. I would prefer to run the risk of more consultation. It is true that any consultation on this creates uncertainty, but I'd much prefer to have the consultation and get better understanding and, where necessary, much better answers than to have avoided that just in the issue of being short and reducing the uncertainty period.
He says the authority is being genuine.
Coming out and doing these processes is absolutely critical to us actually making sure we've got the information right, so how we can form with the legislative framework, but more importantly, so we're actually listening to all the implications and we're conveying them.
I think you need...
Whether meetings like this will be enough to turn the tide of doubt and give farming communities confidence in their future remains to be seen.
Complex and difficult process, but right at the moment, nothing more important.
To get the plan right, to get the balance right, to get the certainty of entitlement right, and to really put the pressure on the politicians, because they're the ones that make the decision. So all I can say is keep that contact up. If there are other meetings, attend them, maintain your rage.